All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Shay. I'll be taking you on today's class on databases. Yeah. So let's take um, a brief introduction to the need for databases. So let's say I have this NodeJS application. As you can see, it has two endpoints, two routes. So one route um, makes a post request to /friends, and what it does is that it pushes a new object to this array, to this friends array. So let me demonstrate that so you can see. So first, let me start my server. Node demo.js. So my server is running now. If I make a post request to this route, so I have a new friend. I send it's so I have some new friends added to that friends array there, and so that's what this does. So each time I make this request, this friends array gets populated with more data. Now, but what happens the moment I say I stop my server or I restart my server? So what happens is that all of the data I've collated, they are gone. So that brings us to the need for a database. So what is a database and why is it important? So first, a database is a collection of information or data, and it is also meant to have an interface with which you can relate with the data. So let me explain. You could have a file that stores, for example, names of people or whatever, and that file could very well look like a database to you, but you do not have a way to interact with that data. So uh, so that's why I said a database is a collection of information, and not just that, it has an interface. So an interface could be, it could be most likely is going to be code which you write to maybe create more data, fetch data that you have created, update data, delete data. Um, so that's a simple definition of what your database is. All right. So, like I said earlier, the problem we were facing was that the data which we had was not persisting. So, database solves that for us. So now let's go to two broad categories of databases. We have the relational database and the non-relational database. So what is a relational database? Relational database, mostly your SQL database, they are tabular database. With flat data, you'd have something like this. For example, you have a table. So all of these would have been predefined. For example, let's say this was a user's table. So this table would have a name, designation, salary, skills, and then all users on this table would definitely have to have a name, a designation, salary, and skills. And if tomorrow we decide that, okay, we want users to have maybe a friend list now, that means we have to come back here to define that again, and then all users have to have that. So that is the little difference we have between relational and non-relational databases. So non-relational databases, on the other hand, mostly known as NoSQL databases. They are object-based. So for this, for example, a user can have status as D, and another user could have no status at all. So that's the difference between the relational and the non-relational database. The non-relational is quite more flexible, and we'll be using one of these in today's class called MongoDB. All right, so let's go to MongoDB now. All right, so let me open a new tab on my browser and just go to mongodb.com. So MongoDB here is what we'll be using. So if you haven't already, I would recommend that you install this, download and install this on your local machine. And if you cannot do that at the moment, I would also give you another alternative to that as we go on. So let's go to installing. Installing is quite very straightforward. Software. So you're clicking on the community server, and then depending on what device you are using, so you can download that. I already have it installed, so I won't go through that again. All right. So when you install this, you're going to have a Mongoose shell, which you can use to interact with your database. You know, I mentioned earlier that your database has to have an interface with which you can relate with the data on it. So the Mongoose shell gives you that ability to interact with your data, to add data, updates, fetch, delete, and so on. So all right, so I have it installed already on my local machine here. So I'll just open my terminal here. So let me open a new tab. All right, so if I run, so I'll just take you through a number of commands that you would regularly use. So Mongod here is to start the MongoDB server. So this is the very first thing you would run. But mostly if you are using Windows, you may not always need to run Mongod because it might start automatically. But if in any case you need to run it, you would find it in the program files, MongoDB server 4.0, bin, yeah, you find mongo.exe here. So you can open this. This is a Linux installation, so I can't open this here. You can also find this mongo.exe here. So this does something else, which we'll also get to very soon. All right, so I said the mongod command starts your MongoDB server. So once this is started, you can start using MongoDB on your local machine. All right, so I have this started already. So now let me go to another tab. So you have to keep this open. You have to keep this running so that you can continue with your Mongo shell. So now the first I've mentioned is Mongod, M-O-N-G-O-D. All right. Let me make a note of all of these things here so that we can keep track of it. All right, so I said the first command is mongo. So to create a MongoDB server. So the next one is Mongo. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right. So this starts the Mongo shell. So I'm going to run that here now so you can see. So if I type Mongo, I'm going to zoom a little bit too. So you can see on the Mongo shell now. So I can now run Mongo commands shell. So now we can start running some commands. So let me give you the next one is, let's just start with help. Help, let me list all of them here. Help, show DBs, use, search, find, updates, and deletes. Oh, sorry, it should be removed. Okay. Now, so let's just type in the help command. Help. So this will show you all of the Mongo shell commands you can use, how to use their arguments and all of that. You would see some of the ones I typed earlier here too. Show DBs, db.blah.find, and all of that. All right. So that's the help command. So if you get stuck on what commands to use and all of that, you can just use the help command there. All right, so the next one is show DBs. So what show DBs is going to do is going to show you a list of databases that have been created on this local device. So if I hit enter now, you would see the number of databases that I have created before now. If I have not created any, you won't see anything aside from admin and config. So if you run show DBs and you have not done anything MongoDB on your local machine before now, you're likely to just see admin and config there. All right, so the next one, so I'm going to create a new database that we're going to use for today's class. So that will lead us to the next command. So I've talked about show DBs. So now use. So the use is to tell your shell what database to use. So if, for example, I just said use demo A, you can see it said switched to DB demo A, right? All right. So, but let's say I want to create a new one for today's class. So I'll just use, let me just call it DB class. You can see on this list here, I do not have it as of now, but when I hit it, it said switch to DB class. So it has created that new database and now it's using it currently. All right, so let's go to the next one, insert. So insert will be to create new data. So in MongoDB, your data is stored in collections. You can view collections as folders. So let's say your hard disk or your flash drive is the database, and then you have folders. Let's say one folder is called movies, another is called music, another is called pictures. So inside of movies, you can now have London Has Fallen, Ocean, Money Heist, and other ones there. So each document you create is stored in a collection, and the database houses all of those collections together. All right. So if, for example, I want to go back to what we did the other time with friends, and I want to create a new friend on the database. So this is the command you use. So db. So let's say I want to store the friend data in a collection called friends. So db, I'll just say db.friends dot insert one. So insert one, as the name implies, is just to create one document. All right. So generally, this uses your JavaScript object notation. So I can just say name is Femi, age is 30, and it says acknowledged true, inserted ID. So now if I say show DBs, you can see DB class here. If I say use DB class. Now, let's say I want to fetch the data in this friends collection now. What I will do is db dot friends dot find. You can see what I created just here, a new document here. So let's create another one, a new friend, db dot friends dot insert one. This time my friend is Elon Musk, and his age is 12. And like I was explaining the other time, non-relational database they are not stereotyped to a table format. So I can have another field for this friend that does not exist on the former one. So let's say net worth is 400 etc. So if I run the same previous command here, this find command, db.friends.find, you see I have two documents in the friends collection. Remember I said friends is just like a folder, and then these are the files you have in the folder. All right. Okay, so we've treated two commands. We treated insert, find. All right, so let's go to updates. By the way, these operations are known as CRUD. That is short for create. Let me spell it out here. CRUD. C stands for creates. R stands for read. U stands for updates. D deletes or destroy or whatever. All right, so these are operations you do a lot of times in a real life application. So you create data, you read data, you update data, and then you destroy. All right, so let's go to updates now. So I can update Femi. Let's update Femi now. So I'll just say db.friends dot update one. So now when I say update one, I have to specify which one to update. So I'm going to specify the one whose name is Femi. So now you might ask, what if I have more than one document with the name Femi? It's going to pick the first one. The first one it finds. All right. So let's say I just wanted to say, I want to change Femi's age from 30 to 50. So I would use this operator called sets age to 50. All right, so it's modified. So if I run db.friends.find again, you can see Femi's age is now 50. All right, finally, let's try deleting. So let's delete Femi. Femi is not a good friend. Then db.friends remove, remove one. Anywhere you find Femi, just delete him. Oh, sorry. That should be delete one. Okay, delete one. Right. So if I find friends again, Femi is gone. All right. So you can see now that regardless of what happens, even if I shut down this Mongo shell and I start it again, our data still persists. So if I use db class again, and then I say db.friends.find, you can see our data is not gone. All right, so that's called persistence. So, all right, so that's about that. So a little more clarification on this. You have, okay, so we'll do more of this when we use it in our app. But you just know that these are the commands we use and we relate to it as we go on. All right, so now let's use this in a Node.js app, because obviously you won't have to be going to your shell to create data or to read data. You have to have a way to interact with it in your Node.js application. So let's do this in app.js here. So I've created a simple app here. I've just installed Express and I'm listening on port 5000. So let me run this server to be sure we're on the same page. I can exit this and just run node app.js. All right, so our app is connected. All right, so now we are going to have to install the MongoDB npm package. So you just do that by running, let me open a new terminal. So you do that by running npm install MongoDB. And can allow that to run. All right, so that is done. So back to our application here. Now, so to connect your database to your application, you have to use something called a connection string. So this connection string usually have a port, just like you have your server listing on port 5000. your database is going to be listening on a particular port. Most times, your MongoDB server is listening on ports 27017, right? So sometimes you need to have username and password and all of that just to help you manage your database connection. So for MongoDB, your connection string is usually structured like this. So let me just declare a variable called connection string equals. So it's usually like this: MongoDB localhost 27017. So slash, so whatever comes after this is going to be the name of the database I'm using. So just to be sure that works, let me use a new name apart from the DB class we used the other time. So let me just call this new DB. All right. So we have not connected to the database yet. So now I'm going to require the MongoDB package that I installed. Const MongoDB equals require MongoDB, and you can just say const Mongo clients. Yeah, Mongo clients equals MongoDB. So I'm going to create a function to connect to the database. All right. So let's just use an async function called connects to DB to take a string. And what that will do is, let's just say const client equals new. By the way, all of this I'm doing, you can find it on the MongoDB documentation. It's not something you need to cram. You always find it. Where is it? You find it on the docs here. Yes. So it's not something, it's not rocket science. You can always get it there. All right. So new Mongo clients. So this connects, this line of code here creates the instance of the Mongo clients. If you check the documentation, I mean on the page I showed you now, docs.mongodb.com/manual here, you will find, let me see if I can get it here. Oh, fine. So this is it here. Mongo clients equals require MongoDB.mongo clients and all of that. All right. So in the documentation, you would find that some other parameters need to be passed. We use unified topology true. And then use cursor true. Along the line, I will comment these options out so you see what happens when I don't use them and why I'm using them. All right. So for now, let's just go on. So let me just do a try and catch here. And then I just await client.connect. And then I just want to return the connected database. Okay, and then if we have any error, let's just catch the error. Let's just log it to the console. All right, so so here let's just say connect to DB. So United is going to take a string. So the string we wanted to take here is this connection string here. So I just say connect to DB connection string. Since it's a promise, then let's just see what the DB looks like. Console.log database connected, and then let's catch any error. So the log error. All right, so let's restart our server here. Let's start the server. NodeJS. So you can see app connected, database connected. So our database is up and running. If I go to my Mongoose shell, just to be sure, let's run the Mongoose shell again and run show DBs. Okay, we don't have any data there yet. That's why it's not appearing here. So let me remove this. I said I'm going to remove this so that you see why I'm using it and why I'm not. So let me just comment this out and start the server. Here. So you can see it's giving me a warning. Blah, blah, blah. Pass option, use unified topology to be true. So that's just the only reason I'm doing that. Okay. Because of the updates they've made to the MongoDB driver, you have to pass this option to your connection string. All right. So let's just comply with that. And then we start the server. And okay, so we're good to go. All right, so let's try creating some documents in this newly created database here. So let me just say, when I connect to the DB, all right, so let me ask you to create a new friend now. db.friends, remember friends is the collection, dot insert, db dot collection, dot collection friends dot insert one. So I can just insert a new friend. Let me have a new friend called Xylos. His age is, let's say 120. Networks is okay. And then when I do that, so let me just split this out so that you can see what is happening. Insert one. This is the object I'm inserting. Okay. And so when I do that, I want to see what has been created. So let me just say console.log doc. So this doc here refers to the result of this operation here. All right, so let me save that. Okay, let me also catch any error that happens. Of course, we'll not have to do this like this in a real app, just to make you understand how this is going to work. All right, so console.log the error. So let's restart the server again. By the way, instead of having to restart your server all the time, you can use a package called NodeJS. So let me just install that so that we won't have to keep shutting down the server and installing it again. So I can just say npm install or NodeJS save dev. So when I use save dev, it's going to save it as dev dependency. So let me just install that. So each time I save my file, it's going to restart the server automatically. I don't have to shut down or restart again. None of that. So let's just install that. Okay. And you could also install it globally. I have it installed globally. I just wanted you to see how I did this. All right. So I can just say no daemon. I can just say no daemon here, and it's going to run app.js. Why? It's running app.js because in package.json, I have my main file to be app.js. All right, so insert one command has been run, and this is what we have. So that document has been created, right? So now let's show DBs again. You will see new DB now exists because now it has some data. Now let's do use new DB, and then let's do db.friends. Find. You notice there's a difference between how I use it on the Mongo shell and how I use it in the application itself. All right, so .find, you can see our friend here. Let's create another one, another friend. This is going to be the last one, so we can do something more practical. Let's have a friend called Tony. Age is 50. Networks, it's a lot more. Right. So if I save it, you can see here. Okay. All right, so it's created already. So if I do this again, db.friends.find, you can see I have two friends. So another way you can run, let's do that in the file itself. I'm not on the shell again. So I could also do the find command here. Instead of db.collection.insert1, let me comment all of this out and do collection friends dot find that's 10. So when we find the friends, the result of this will be an array. Anytime you use .find, the result will be an array of documents. So .friends and just console.log friends, and I'll go to my oh, sorry. Find Okay. There seems to be an issue with this. Okay, let's seem to be doing something, but let's just go on because of time. All right, so I've explained how you connect with your MongoDB server in the NodeJS application. All right, so let's do a few more things before we wrap it up now. So now let's assume, for example, here, I have this route that makes a post request to /friends. And each time I do that, I want it to add this new set of friends to my list of friends, right? Now, doing this with the MongoDB package is possible, but along the line, it's going to become a little bit, let me say, strenuous, all right? So most of the time, you would need to use a tool called Mongoose. So let me just open Mongoose documentation so you can see Mongoose. Okay, let's just check the documentation here. All right. I actually want you to see introduction. Okay. So it says elegant MongoDB object modeling for NodeJS. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. So it provides a straightforward schema-based solution to model your application data. It includes built-in typecasting, validation, query building, and all of that, and all of that. All right, so what that means is that for each time, if you notice what happened here, each time I need to do something on the database, I have to create this connection and then do my database operations there. All right. So with Mongoose, you do not have to always do that. You just have to create your connection once and then do all of what you need to do with the database. So I'm going to take this off. Let me just comment it out so you can still see its data. We'll still keep our connection string. We're still going to use it. All right. So let's install Mongoose. Excuse me. So Mongoose docs says you have to do npm install mongoose -c. So let me run that in my terminal here. Just do npm install mongoose. I'm not doing -c because node npm automatically does that now. So I don't need to do -c. All right. So it's installing. Okay, great. So we have Mongoose installed. You see that in package.json, express, MongoDB, Mongoose. All right. So here, let me just take this off. All right. So all I need to do for Mongoose to work is just require the package. First, require Mongoose. And then almost the same way I did this, almost the same way I did. Actually, behind the scenes, what Mongoose does is the same thing you have here. but it just takes a lot of this stress off your shoulders. So I'm going to comment this out. Okay, it's getting a little untidy. So let me just delete this. Let me delete this, and let me delete this too. Okay, I wouldn't need this anymore. So let's take this off. All right, so all I need to do now is mongoose.connect. Oh, sorry. Let's connect. So the URI, you can see the argument is the URI, and then the options. So the URI here is the connection string. So mongoose.connect connection string. I could also do, of course, you know that I could also just do MongoDB, blah, 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 just like I have here. So connection string, and then the options, just like we did the other time. Use unified topology, true. I think that's just the major one we need. So we can add a callback to this. It's an error. The arguments, and then see if there's an error. Also, actually this works just fine, but to avoid any confusion, let me use my brackets. Console.log error, else console.log database connected. Right. So if I go back to my terminal here now, you can see I have the database connected, and you can see I have a new one in now. Excuse me. It says pass the option use new URL parser to be true to Mongo clients.connect. So of course you can see it's also using the Mongo clients.connect, which we used earlier. So it's basically just doing the same thing we did, but just handling it a little bit better than we have done. So let's pass this option here. Use new URL parser, true, right? And that error should be gone. Okay, good. So we are connected. All right. So in Mongoose, you have something called a schema. Okay, so what is a schema? A schema is like a definition of what to expect in your data. Now, on an actual note, your database, this schema only relates with your application and your database. I mean, the connection between your application and the database, but it does not affect the database in any way. Here's what I mean. All right, so the schema is like declaring how your data should look like. All right, so let's say, for example, we've been adding friends here by just doing name, age, net worth, right? So let's say any friend we want to have has to have a name, age, and net worth. So in Mongoose, we're going to create something called a schema. So let's create a schema. So I'm going to say const friend schema equals before I do that, let me just say const schema equals Mongoose. Of course, you know this is the same thing as saying mongoose.schema. In fact, you will see that here already. All right. So friend schema equals new schema. So now, just like you have data types in JavaScript, your schema also has data types. Let's check that here. Schemas, the documentation here, so that you understand what I'm saying better. So let's start from here. Everything in Mongoose starts with a schema. Each schema maps to a MongoDB collection and defines the shape of the documents within that collection. That's pretty straightforward. So you would see something like this. New schema, title, string, author string, body string. All right, so the data types you have in your schema, just like you have in JavaScript. Let me create a long comment here. So you have string, you have number, you have array, you have objects, you have object ID. Okay, you also have Boolean. Okay. Yeah, I think that should be all of the types you have. All right. So what this means is that, okay, let's go back to the shell. Now, this friend has a name. This data type is what? A string. This friend has an age property. That data type 120 is what? A number. Just like that. Net worth is a number. So let's just create a schema like that. So for every friend we have, it should have a name. And that name should be a string. That's just what I'm trying to explain. Age, that age should be a number. What's the last one? Net worth. And that should also be a number. Okay, let's add one more field. It's school. And that should be a Boolean. Of course, you know the Boolean means true or false. All right. So after declaring your schema, yeah, so let's call it, let's name the steps. Step 1, connect to database. Step 2, declare schema. Step 3, model data from schema. Or I would rather say model collection from schema. All right, so I think this should summarize what I'm doing. All right, so friend schema is what instructs Mongoose to create any new data in this collection. So each schema represents a collection. Remember, a collection is like a folder. So what would instruct Mongoose to know what to call that collection is this mongoose.model. So let's call it friend. And then, so we are saying model, create a new collection called friends. It's going to pluralize this word to friends. All right, so model friends from this schema, from friend schema. So that's all we need to do. So when we want to create a new friend document in the collection, is going to follow this schema. So let's try that out now. Let's just say, and schema. Okay, so let's create a new friend. So I'll just say friend dot create. By the way, you will see all of this in Mongoose documentation here. I would really recommend that you go through it. It's very straightforward. So let's go back to creating a new document. Create. So now we know we have to follow this schema. So let's say name is dash let's see is 40. The next box. Let's just give him, and then it's cool. Yeah, it's a very cool guy. Sure. All right, so once we are done with this, let's add a callback to this to know if we are adding a callback because this operation is going to take just a few seconds. So we want to know when it's done and the result of that action. All right, so let's just pass a callback error first, then friend. So this friend refers to the documents that we created from this operation, this dot create operation here. Okay, I think I'm using arrow functions. So let me just use the regular function, arrow friend, and then if there's an error, console.log that error. Else, console.log new friend is this guy here. All right. So let's see what happens on the terminal. Here, here's my terminal. It's right here. Okay, so you can see new friend, it has an ID. So this ID here is a unique identifier for every document that is created on the database. All right, so we have name, age, net worth, school. Let's try making this a string and let's see what happens. Okay, so the number constructor here has forced this to be a number value. Let's make it something that could not be a number value. Let's just say some money. Oh, it doesn't have some money, it has a lot of money. Let's see what happens here. So you can see it's throwing an error. It says friend validation failed. Net worth cast to number field for value, a lot of money at part net worth. You understand what that means? Is that the database is expecting us to give a number here. because we declared this schema to be a number, but we passed in a string. And since it could not force this string to be a number, it throws an error. So that's the essence of the schema we are creating. So you might not really appreciate why we are using a schema here, but as you begin to build applications that need to grow, you need to validate. For example, you are creating an application where people need to log in and people need to register, and you want to check that somebody is not passing, for example, a number as his email address. You understand? So that's where all of this comes. All right, so that explains all of this. So let's add a little more to this. Let's just use these other types, the array and object type. So let's say cars should be an array. So I could either call it an array like this. I could just use the array symbol, square brackets. It will interpret it just the same way. So let's use this. So the beauty of using the square bracket is that I can further declare what type of data I want inside that array. This can contain any collection of data, any combination of data. But I could specify that I want just strings here. So this means cars should be an array of strings. All right, I could say number. This means cars should be an array of numbers. All right, but if you're not trying to be particular about what type of data should be inside, you could just use the empty array square brackets, or just say array. Either of both work fine. And then we want to, okay, let's have a relationship history. So let's use an object for this, or let's use an array of objects. So I could also have an array of objects just like this. I could have objects that if I wanted to, okay, let me declare one to be just an object. So let me say current status. I just call it status. So I can use the curly braces or just say objects. Relationship history. Let me make it an array of objects. All right. So even for the objects, I could further declare the key value pairs I want. For example, I want it to be status, let's say accounts string PD rest. What am I talking? Account string cash at, and let me put the number as PD rest. Let's call it a boolean. So you understand, I could declare what I want inside of that object to that same way, right? So the same thing I can have here. Instead of this object, I can have this. Just the same way, shorthand. I could also declare what I want. Relationship history, let's say name, string, start dates. Oh, yes, so we also have a date data type here. I forgot that. Dates. So I can use dates here, and dates, then I can say is active. Just call that a boolean. All right. So now I have a lot more number of fields to play with. All right. So let's create a new friend called. Let me not use Abesh. Let's use Bawa. No, let's use Femi. It's 30 years old. His network is this. Is cool. False. Okay, so let's try something odd now. Let's add a field that does not exist in the schema here. Let's just say has money. And say true. Let's save this and see what happens here. You'd see that our database did not recognize that field called has money. Why? Because it couldn't find it in this schema here. So that is the essence of the schema. Although if I go to the Mongoose shell, I can create a new friend that would have that field called has money. So that was why I said the other time that the schema is just between your application. It's just a relationship between your application and the database, not a binder on the database itself. So it does not stop the database itself from creating new fields as it wants, but it controls what your application can create and update and whatever. So that's just the explanation for that. All right. So we can use all of this now to create let's do this as the last one. Cars, string, Ferrari, Bentley. What's the next one? Status. Okay, so let me just copy all of this and then let me collapse this. All right, status, accounts. Cash account, 2000. Okay, let's go to 200. Has been divest, false. Relationship history, let's make it 2 objects. So name, Shadi, start dates. So this will convert this string. You could also use the JavaScript dates constructor here. It would work. Well, let me use the string 2020 0301. Sadly, the relationship ended 2020 03. Okay, that's fine. Active is false. Then new one. Name. Voila. In the pandemic, that was broken. All right, so let's save that. Okay, so we have a new friend, this. So you can see all of the data we added reflected correctly. You have this object here because we are logging into the console and it can't really display the object, right? So that's for creation. I hope you still remember I mentioned 4 operations: create, read, update, and delete. So to create, use model whatever the name of the model is. In this case, our model is called friend here. So model dot creates, and then you pass in the object. To read. So to read, it could be either fetching many or fetching one. So to fetch many, you would use model.find. So if you just did, and you have to pass these objects, curly braces in between. So if you do model.find this, it will bring all of the documents in that collection. You know, model here is referring to, for example, friend in what we've been doing, right? Okay. So you could also pass in a query here inside of this .find. You would see that here, queries here. All right. So this explains what I'm trying to say. .find, and then you pass a query inside the .find. Let's just quickly demonstrate that. Let's comment this out, and let's see friend.find. So I have to pass in this object here, and then pass a callback. Error friends. If you remember, I mentioned the other time that the result of this would be an array. All right, so let me see if there's an error. Console.log error, else console.log friends. Yeah, so like I said the other time, if you're writing just one line of code in your if statements, you could skip the curly braces and it will work perfectly. So let's just use this. All right, so good. You'll see friends in the terminal here is an array. Can you see it here? Friends is an array of objects, and each object represents all of the friends we have created in the application. Now, what if I just wanted to find friends that, for example, friends with the name King Abesh? So that's where the query comes in. Query. All right. So the query is just to specify what you want to fetch from the database. So passing this empty object says fetch all. But then when I pass in a filter here, for example, I say name is King Abesh. If we had more than one friend with the name King Abesh, they would be inside of that array. But since we have only one, you'll see that it will just give us, it should just give us that one. Where's my question? All right. Okay, we have more than one. Fine. So you will see our friends array here has more than one array, more than one object. For each of those objects have name King Abesh, name King Abesh, name King Abesh. All right. So that's just how the query works. So if I said age, okay, let me specify it further and say age is 40. All right, so I have how many of them now? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, about 4 or 5 there. Yeah, but all of them have the name as King Abesh, age 40. And you can obviously see that they are different because their net worths are different. Let's pick the one with the net worth that is 3,000, and let's see what it gives us. Net worth is 3,000. So you see I have just two. All right, so that's how the find query works. Object model.find, then inside of that you pass in the query. So your query can be an object, an empty object, or an object with key value pairs. All right, so that's fetching many. Now if you're fetching just one, all you need to do is you could use two queries, model.find one, and then you can pass a query, which could also be an empty object, but then that will just look for the first document it can find with no parameters. This would returns an array. It could be an empty array. This will return an object, and if it cannot find a document that matches this query, it returns null. All right, so we could use model.find one to the query. Let's try that here. Friend.find one, name King Abesh, age 40, network 30. Remember the last time we did that, it gave us 2. But now we are saying find one. So let's see what it gives us here now. So and it gives us just one. Friends, that is just this one here. Let's try looking for a non-existent name here. Let's just say name is Abracadabra. And we don't have a friend called Abracadabra. So friends is what here? It's null. Right. So it's either going to give you an object or it's going to return null. All right. So the other one is model.find by ID. So this one does not take an object. This one just takes a string. And the string it takes is in this format here. Remember I said this ID here is a unique identifier. This ID here, underscore ID rather. So the .find by ID, what it does is that it searches for the document with that ID. So this is the most specific way of looking for an object or querying a document in your database. So it returns an object, and if it cannot find it, or null. All right. So let's try that here. .find one. So let me do that in 2 ways. I can say .find one. Let me copy this ID here, and use that here. ID is this string. Now it's just going to be one friend. Okay. So let's save and see what happens here. So you can see it finds this one, right? So if I would use find by ID. So find by ID is basically just doing the same thing that this one will do. It's going just to find by ID. And like I said, this will just be a string, not an object. Find by ID just takes a string, not an object. All right, so you see that works the same way. So That's wraps up for reading data from the database using Mongoose queries. So to read, to create, I've explained that. To read, okay, so let's go to updates. So you can have updates 1, updates many. All right. So so if I'm updating 1, I'm updating 1 here. So let me do that. Sorry. Yeah. So let's say I want to update this friend. I have 3 friends called. Sorry about that. I have 3 friends called King Abesh, and I want to update just this one. I want to adjust the name to something else. So I can do that in a number of ways. So let's take this off. We don't find creates. Let's take all of this off. So I can say friend dots. So we're starting with updating 1, right? Updating 1. So can use the find. If you're using VS Code like I am, you would see these methods the moment you start typing. So you can find it easy to use. So find by ID and updates, as the name implies, is that it will find the document with that ID and updates. So let's try find by ID and updates. And that will take a string. Of course, you see that here, ID, which is a string. So let's use that same ID we used. Then the other parameter will be an object. These objects will represent what I want to update in that data. So for example, I want the name now to be Babao. So when I do this now, I have to save friend. Let me do it in steps so that you can see. Let's find the ID for this. Change the name to this. Then the callback error friend. So if there's an error, console log the error, else friend. So now after updating it, if you have to save, otherwise all what you did here will end on this line here. All right. So friend.save. Friend.save. So you could also pass in, like I said, this operation takes time. So you pass in a callback to know when it's done. Error done. So if there's an error, so this is callback here actually. You'd discover how to do this without passing callbacks all the time. But for now, let's just stick with callbacks. If error, consider the error, else console. I'm deliberately doing this so you get used to seeing it. Friend updated. All right, so okay, so you can see friend updated. All right, and it's giving us a warning here that the use, find, and modify. Okay, so what it's asking us to do is that here we should pass in use, find, and modify true to false. Okay, false. All right, so friend updated. Okay, so that is how you update. You could also do find one and update. And in that case, you know, just like you did with find one, you have to pass in an object, which is going to be the query. So you can say name, blah, 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 blah. And if it doesn't find it, what happens? Um, let's um, let's try to catch that. So if there's no friend, console.log friend does not exist. All right. Oh, it says cannot read. Yeah, cannot read the table of null. Yes, so we said. Oh, sorry, I should do that here. If error, and if no friend. Okay. So it says friend does not exist. So that is what. So you should also know that you will undo all of those edge cases. If the data you're looking for does not exist, what should you do? Otherwise, this will throw an error and can crash your server. All right, so that's updates. I could just also do update menu. So I would not want to go through all of this one after the other. I've given you precedence, so you can go through the MongoDB, the Mongoose, documentation here, and read it up and know what to do with them. All right, so finally, to wrap this up. So now you know how to create, read, update, delete. So I would leave you to find out about delete by yourself from the documentation. Now, so let's finally do this in an application. So let's see how we can actually do this in, let's say, a request, a post request. I believe you already know how to create a post request. So let's just do, before we do that, let's install this package called okay, install. Let's create two routes. So we create two routes. So the first route is going to be a GET request that will fetch all friends in the database. Then the second one, we add a new friend to the database. The third one will update. I said two routes. Let's make it 4. Updates an existing friend. The last one deletes an existing friend. So let's do this very fast, very, very fast. Okay, First one, fetch all friends in the database. So we do that by creating a route. So let's say app.get slash, let's call it slash friends. And when we go to that route, I believe you know how to create an Express app. So I'm going to explain all of this. So when I get into this route, what I want it to do is friend.find and then passing the callback. Yeah, so like I said, we'll still make do with callbacks for now. Error friends. So if there's an error, we don't want to console the log, we want to see it in the response. So let's just say errors.json error else return res.json. Let's add status code is the status 500 JSON and then res.status 200 JSON friends. I think there are a lot of questions on the chats. Maybe I should just answer the questions instead of going further. Can you please demonstrate how to find the specific friend? I think I've explained that. Okay. So if your question is about Express, you can arrest King Abesh for that. Using the HTTP create server for this might even be more complex. So that's why I'm trying not to use that. Okay. So return this. All right, so let's do that in the browser or on Postman. Let's do that on Postman.
It doesn't have to be like.
Okay. 5,000 slash friends. This is a get requests. Okay. Yes, I know you have not created an Express app before, Tracy. Yes, I can see that. But I don't think it's not so different from what we've been doing with http.create server. So it's just almost the same thing. All right. So I think this is pretty straightforward, I guess. So you can see the friends array here in the response. All right. Let's do app dots. Posts slash friends. Okay, since you said you've not done Express app, let me not bother doing this. That's might just complicate a little more further. Let me just end the class here. Yes, you can arrest Adesh, for anything you have not done on Express. All right, so let me just stop here for now. A task will be created on this. If you have any questions on this, or any confusions, let's meet on the Slack channel. We can address some of those questions. Thank you very much.